Background: my husband, 35-year-old man, and I, 33-year-old woman, have been married for 5 years. We own a beautiful vacation home on the beach that we built ourselves and use throughout the year. My in-laws, who are in their 60s, have always been welcome guests, visiting for a few weeks here and there, and contributing financially towards maintenance costs. Last month, my in-laws suddenly announced they were selling their house to downsize and move into a tiny condo. Apparently, they've been secretly harboring this idea for months, never mentioning it to me or my husband. They plan to close on the sale in 2 weeks and then move into our vacation home for 6 months while they figure things out. I was floored. This house is our sanctuary, not a retirement home extension. We use it frequently, have friends and family booked to visit throughout the year, and rely on the income it generates during peak season. My in-laws, on the other hand, haven't lifted a finger on the property themselves and contributed only minimally. My husband, bless his sweet heart, is more understanding. He feels bad for his parents and believes we can make it work. His in-laws, sensing my resistance, are now guilt-tripping us, claiming they have nowhere else to go and offering to pay significantly more than their usual contribution. Am I the idiot for refusing to let them move in? On one hand, I feel obligated to help family in need, but on the other, this feels like an outrageous imposition on our personal space and finances. Edited to add an update, as it'll likely get lost down in the comments. I'll give a quick update while I wait to get the kids from school and answer a few questions I saw pop up. We co-own the beach house. We bought it in 2020 when interest rates were super low before houses skyrocketed. The in-laws have helped us with projects and pay for a few things, but so do my parents, so we have never thought of their contribution as anything but help from parents. They had their annual Old Farts Christmas party, their words not mine, there this past December, and had the place for a week free of charge for them and all their guests. So they definitely have gotten plenty of use of it. We had a come-to-Jesus moment yesterday, and I was the jerk to my husband. I told him I was done, and I wasn't even entertaining them staying there as it's our business, and this is bad business. I basically told him I was over his mom, and it was at the point I'm about to peace out because I can't handle her shoot anymore. Previously, I was no contact with her and would entertain them when they'd come to visit. They never stayed at our house as we live relatively close to them. He still has no clue if they're truly selling their house, if they're upside on bills or they're just jerks. But I honestly don't care. My parents are immigrants and own a restaurant and have worked their asses off to create a fantastic life for me and my siblings. They also taught us the value of money and working hard for the things we have. The vacation home was bought cheap, but 90% of the renovations were done by me during my free time. Renovations are my true love. Nursing pays the bills, I love it too, but it doesn't fill the creative cup. I told him he'd lose the house to his parents over my dead body, and if he feels the need to financially set them up, he can do so with extra money he earns from picking up shifts, also a nurse. Basically, I told him their failure was not an emergency on my part. They have always kept up with the Joneses and spent exorbitantly. So they might be broke, and again, I don't care. I have barely tolerated his mom for the past few years. I'll be cordial because I was raised well. But I'm over-tolerating their nonsense. I will say he does see all this crap she pulls, but he was raised that mom knows best. He's Puerto Rican, so this is partially cultural. But I'm done. I worked yesterday and busted my butt, and then drove the kids to the beach house last night and picked up dinner. And we are there, and I just thought, frick no. So time will tell, but he called his parents and on speakerphone told them they couldn't stay, but the offer to condo hunt is still open. But he needs to know the price range and all that jazz. His mom cried, and I flipped the phone off. So as of this moment, it's not happening. I also told him, if it's a problem, he can quit claim deed the beach house, and I'll cover the expenses and manage it myself, 'cause mama don't play. Now, for a few comments before the update. Not the idiot. Nope, nope, nope. As a retired senior, our planning was done years in advance. I read every best place to retire article, researched possible spots. We even traveled to a few close areas to scope them out. We made a list of things that would be more important as aging people: health facilities, activities meeting our declining abilities, transportation toward the time we wouldn't be able to drive, even assisted living facilities and veterinarians. We spent the 2 years before the projected bug-out date getting rid of stuff and storing what we knew wouldn't be needed immediately. If you let your in-laws descend on your home, you'll have a hard time prying them out. Tell your husband no, and don't back down. This is shitty planning on their part. Youth can do things on the spur of the moment and still have time to retrench if things go wrong. Retirement is different. You will suffer more if they can't make up their minds or things go pear-shaped because they don't know what they are doing. Comment 2. No freaking way. They should have had things figured out before they sold their house. How do you know if they even plan on moving out? Where is their furniture going? This would be a marriage-ending decision for me. Now, for the update. Hey Reddit, back with an update on the in-law vacation home saga. It's been a chaotic couple of weeks, and I've got some news that's going to knock your socks off. So, after the whole blow-up with my husband about his parents wanting to move into our beach house, things got pretty tense at home. My husband, who's usually the peacemaker, was caught between a rock and a hard place. His parents on one side and his fuming wife on the other. I was adamant that our vacation home wasn't going to become a half-year retirement spot for his folks. Now, remember how I mentioned that my in-laws like to keep up appearances? Well, turns out they were hiding more than just their downsizing plans. A few days after our big argument, my husband comes home looking like he's seen a ghost. He sits me down and drops the news. His parents are flat broke. All those years of lavish spending and trying to outdo the neighbors left them with nothing but debt. They weren't just downsizing, they were desperately trying to stay afloat. I was floored. Here I was, thinking they were just being entitled, but they were actually in deep trouble. My husband, bless his heart, felt even worse now. He wanted to help them, but he also knew our beach house wasn't the answer. We decided to sit down with his parents and have a heart-to-heart. It was one of the most awkward conversations of my life. They admitted everything: the debt, the desperation, the whole 9 yards. They even confessed that they'd hoped living with us would help them get back on their feet without having to spill the beans about their financial mess. But here's where it gets juicy. During this whole emotional roller coaster, my husband's sister, who's always been the black sheep of the family, reached out to us. She'd heard about the situation and wanted to offer her help. Turns out, she'd been quietly successful with her own business and had some money set aside. She offered to help our in-laws with a down payment on a condo, but she had one condition. They had to come clean about their finances and get professional help to manage their money. You could have heard a pin drop when she laid out her offer. My in-laws were stunned. They'd always looked down on her for not following the traditional path, and now she was their lifeline. It was a humbling moment for everyone. But wait, there's more. Just when we thought things were starting to settle down, another curveball came our way. My husband's parents, in a last-ditch effort to maintain some control, suggested that they move into the condo and we sell them the beach house for a fraction of its worth, promising they'd turn their lives around with this investment. I nearly lost it. After everything, they were still trying to manipulate the situation. I put my foot down, hard. I told them there was no way that was happening. The beach house was our blood, sweat, and tears, not a bargaining chip for their mistakes. The confrontation was intense. Voices were raised, tears were shed, and in the end, my husband stood by me. He told his parents that while we would support them in finding a new place, the beach house was off limits. So, as of now, they've reluctantly accepted his sister's offer. They're working with a financial advisor and looking at condos within their new budget. My husband and I are still reeling from the drama, but we're holding strong. Our beach house remains our sanctuary, and we're keeping it that way. And just when I thought we could breathe a sigh of relief, my husband gets a call from his mom. She's found a condo, all right, but it's in the same complex as our vacation home. She said it was fate, and that they'd be neighbors whether we liked it or not. I used to be a stripper to support my family after my brother's addiction ruined us, and now he shames me and makes religious remarks. Oh boy, he and his wife tried to embarrass me at a family gathering. I kicked them out of my house. Many people support my decision, but some think it's wrong to evict them while they are expecting a child. I feel betrayed by my parents for helping my brother find a new place to live using the money I gave them. I confront my brother at his church and set the record straight about my sacrifices for our family. His wife accuses me of trying to ruin their lives. I decide to cut ties with them. Oh boy. I am having a hard time feeling remorseful, and I am unwilling to apologize for calling out my brother and asking him to vacate my property. I have given him many chances to stop this behavior, but my brother won't stop shaming me for having been a stripper before I got my prestigious job. These are his literal words. I'm a nurse anesthetist. He has been making offhand remarks about me having been a stripper since he found out 6 years ago. He goes on long tirades about how I am ungodly, unholy, and that the sins I committed can never be forgiven unless I repent and let Christ into my heart. I am not religious, and I'm certainly not a Christian, and I will never be one. But my brother refuses to accept this. Also, I only started stripping because of his drug and gambling addiction, which ruined mine and our parents' lives. He remortgaged their house, took out loans and several credit cards in our parents' name, and even sold our parents' identity to his former dealer. I didn't know how bad the situation was until I came home one day from university and found strangers living in our house. My father was too embarrassed to let me know they were living out of their car. They also never reported my brother to the police because my parents didn't want him back in prison. Last time he went in for 2 years, me and my parents were blackmailed to pay his prison debt. So, when I found out my parents, baby sister, and baby brother were living out of their car, I decided to work as a stripper. I made good money, and with that money, I was able to house my family, pay off my parents' debt, my brother's debt, and put my younger siblings through college, university. During that time, I also paid for his rehab, and he got his act together. Now he is happily married, employed, sober, and with a child on the way. FYI, I paid for his wife's IVF treatments. Last Sunday, our parents invited some people over for a big catered dinner. My brother and his wife thought this would be the perfect time to turn it into what he called a whorevention and embarrass me in front of all the guests. I completely lost it. I was so enraged that I spent most of the evening cussing him and my sister-in-law out. I reminded him that I would never have been a stripper if he hadn't tried to ruin us. On Monday, I drew up an eviction notice and sent it to him. I want to cut all ties with him and his family. I am truly done with him. Almost everyone is telling me I am right in being angry, but that it's terrible to kick him and his wife out when they are due to have their first child in 9 weeks. My parents are begging me to forgive him, and honestly, I feel like I have been, and I'm being reasonable. I've given them 90 days. I am done being called the intimacy worker of Babylon and the downfall of mankind. Apologies for the length, but I thought I needed you all to know as much as possible, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. I had to repost this because the moderators locked it down for breaking the rules. I've edited it and reposted it for judgment. Thanks, edit. For clarity, I stripped for 5 years and used the money from that to claw myself and my family out of debt and pay for my brother's rehab. I haven't stripped in over a decade. I paid for my sister-in-law's IVF and bought the house my brother and his wife live in with my nurse anesthetist money. That is why he doesn't feel bad about asking me for help now, because this money wasn't made from sinning. Also, my sister-in-law is just as bad as he is. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. I'm sitting here happily imagining you saying, in front of the guests, well, you forced me to strip. If you hadn't remortgaged the house, making my entire family literally homeless, all so you could get more drugs, then I wouldn't have had to find the fastest way to earn the most cash to literally put a roof over our heads. I'm so glad you are now so noble and wonderful. Move out of my house and pay me back the thousands of dollars you owe me. You are. He's a bigger AH because not only is he using this against you, he's incredibly insecure and using bullying tactics to hide his own lack of capacity. Talk about a small weenie syndrome. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Oh my god. What horrible people. No one should be judged by what they have to do to survive. And even then, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You were able to help your family in so many ways. It's extremely respectable. Your brother and sister-in-law sound very ungrateful and cruel. I would have cut ties when he made my parents homeless, so more respect to you for being so kind. Frick them. 90 days is plenty. If they wanted to live there, they shouldn't have treated you like that. Plain and simple. Now for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been 3 months since my last post, and boy, a lot has happened. I'm still struggling with feeling remorseful, and I'm not about to apologize for standing up to my brother. Despite everything, he just won't stop shaming me for my past as a stripper, even though I've moved on to a career as a nurse anesthetist. Let's dive into the new developments. After I sent the eviction notice, things got even more heated. My brother tried to play the victim, telling everyone who would listen that I was the cruel sister, kicking him out with a baby on the way. But let's not forget, this is the same brother who nearly destroyed our family with his addiction. The heartbreak hit when I found out my parents were secretly helping him look for a new place, using the money I'd given them for emergencies. It felt like a betrayal, considering how much I'd sacrificed for our family. I couldn't believe they were taking his side after everything. But the real jaw-dropper came when I discovered my brother had been spreading lies about me at his church, painting me as some fallen woman who needed saving. It was infuriating to hear that after I'd worked so hard to rebuild our lives, including his. The confrontation was inevitable. I went to his church and set the record straight in front of his congregation. I told them about the sacrifices I made to save our family from his mess. The room was silent, and my brother, he just stood there speechless. Now, let's rewind a bit to give you some context. My brother's addiction wasn't just a phase. It was a destructive force that lasted years. He'd been in and out of rehab, funded by me, and each time we thought he'd turned a corner, he'd slip back into old habits. His wife, who should have been his rock, was just as bad, enabling his behavior and even joining in on the shaming. Back to the present, my brother's wife, who I'd helped with IVF treatments, decided to confront me. She accused me of trying to ruin their lives and said I was jealous of their happiness. Can you believe that? After everything I'd done for them, this was the thanks I got. The situation escalated when she tried to slap me, but I dodged it. I told her that I was done being the family's ATM and that they needed to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. It was a moment of liberation for me, but it also marked the end of any relationship we had. In the midst of all this, my younger siblings, who I'd put through college, stood by me. They reminded me that I wasn't alone and that they appreciated everything I'd done. It was a small comfort, but it meant the world to me. As the 90-day eviction deadline approached, my brother finally started to show some remorse. He came to me, begging for forgiveness, saying he'd seen the error of his ways. But after years of his insults and tirades, his words felt empty. I'd given him so many chances, and each time he'd thrown them back in my face, I stuck to my decision, and as the day came for them to leave, I watched as they packed up their things. It was a bittersweet moment. On one hand, I was freeing myself from their toxicity, but on the other, I was watching my brother, who I once loved and protected, walk out of my life. In the end, my brother and his wife moved out, and the house felt eerily quiet. I'd stood my ground, but at what cost? My family was fractured, and while I knew I'd done the right thing, it didn't make the situation any less painful. So here I am, 3 months later, still picking up the pieces. My parents are slowly coming around, realizing that I had to take a stand. My younger siblings are my rock, and I'm focusing on my career and my own well-being. My brother lives rent-free in our parents' basement, but he accuses me of being selfish and not caring about his kids. Oh boy, he got a big surprise when he snooped through my stuff. My brother, who is 32 years old, has been knocking up his wife, who is also 32 years old, since they were in high school. Their oldest is now 13, but they have 3 more children. She is a stay-at-home mom, and he works as cleaning staff at a FIFO camp. It's pretty good money, but they waste a lot of it. They have multiple gaming systems, and the 2 oldest kids have very new iPhones. I, who am 28 years old, live in the loft above my parents' garage. I do not pay rent because my folks want me to save up for my future. I help out around the house, and I buy groceries for my parents as well as myself. My brother and his family live in the in-law suite in my parents' basement. It was supposed to be a rental to get them some extra money for when they retire, but after my brother lost his job because he would not get vaccinated, our folks let them move in. I also loved to buy them gifts, but my brother and his family always needed exactly what I happened to give them. For example, I brought my mom a very colourful bag from Colombia called a mochila. It is just a woven cotton shoulder bag made with very vibrantly coloured yarn. My niece, who is 9 years old, saw it and wanted to use it for a project at school, where she promptly lost it. I got my father a bottle of Van Winkler bourbon since he loves to have a drink after a long day. My brother and his wife found it and drank it mixed with orange juice because it was so strong tasting. So now I do other stuff. I took my mom to go see Anastasia and I got us really good seats. No one else was invited. I took my dad out for a steak dinner and then to a speakeasy in our city and treated him to a $160 cocktail. These are things my parents love doing but won't waste money on. I keep the groceries I buy in my loft. I will make meals for my parents and have them over. Or I will bring the ingredients and cook with my dad. My brother started asking why I don't leave the groceries in the freezer, fridge, or pantry that they have access to, and why I stopped buying my parents gifts. He says that I'm living there for free and I should give them more. I asked him how much he was paying them in rent or how he was contributing to the household, and he said he was tired on the weeks he was home and that his wife and kids were too busy to help. I work a full-time job. I volunteer at a cat rescue. I do theatre sports as a hobby, and I still manage to help with yard work, housework, errands, and helping with my grandmother, who is in a locked-in facility for dementia patients. I pointed this out, and he said I was being a little witch. I said I wasn't stupid enough to leave anything around that he or his family could steal. Now we are fighting, and my parents are upset. His wife called me a jerk for not sharing the treats I buy for my parents. I can afford to buy treats for my parents and me, but not for 5 more people who do not contribute. Now, for a few comments before the update. Now we are fighting, and my parents are upset. To be frank, your parents should be upset that their son is an anti-vaxxer idiot who can't support his 4 children. And they should be upset at how casually and frequently he exploits them. But since they're probably focusing on the lack of peace around the house and want you two to stop fighting, so stop. He wants to make little comments. Just ignore them and say something wholly unrelated in response. He wants to try texting things. Block his number. Same goes for his unemployed wife. She has nothing of value to say, so stop pretending she does by addressing her comments as if they deserve to be acknowledged. Not the idiot. You did give physical gifts, and your brother and his family have used them instead of the intended recipients. You might not pay rent in money, but you do contribute to the household in that you help with chores and other things. The whole "I do not pay rent due to my parents wanting me to save up for my future" very much gives off "I offered at least once or twice, but no, and here's why" energy. Your parents should be the ones dealing with your brother, sister-in-law, and their kids, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. I know that my mom and stepdad would kick me out if I was behaving like your brother and sister-in-law are behaving. Now for the update. Hey everyone, back with an update on the situation with my brother and his family living in my parents' basement. It's been a tense 3 days, and I can hardly believe what's gone down. So, after our last fight, things were tense. My brother was still fuming about me not sharing groceries and gifts with his family. I thought it would blow over, but boy was I wrong. 2 days ago, I came home from work to find my brother waiting for me in the driveway. He had this look on his face, like he was ready to explode. He started accusing me of being selfish and not caring about his kids. I tried to stay calm and explain that I'm just looking out for our parents, who have been way too generous with him already. But then, he dropped a bombshell. He said that he knew I had been saving up to move out, and that I had a decent amount stashed away. I was shocked. How did he know about my savings? I never told anyone about that, not even my parents. It turns out he had been snooping through my stuff when I was out volunteering at the cat rescue. I was livid. I told him it was none of his business and that he had crossed a line. We argued back and forth until my dad came out and broke it up. He told my brother to back off and reminded him that he was living in their house rent-free. The next day, I thought things would cool down, but nope. My brother's wife cornered me in the kitchen while I was making dinner for my parents. She started crying, saying that they were struggling and that I should be more understanding. She even tried to guilt-trip me by saying that their youngest, who's only 4, didn't understand why Uncle wouldn't share his food. I felt bad for the kids. I really did, but I stood my ground. I told her that they needed to start taking responsibility for their own lives and stop relying on everyone else. But here's where it gets crazy. Later that night, I heard noises coming from the garage. I went down to check it out and found my brother trying to break into my loft. He was halfway through the window, and I caught him red-handed. I couldn't believe it. My own brother was trying to steal from me. We had another huge fight, and this time, my parents heard everything. They came out and saw what was happening. My mom was in tears, and my dad was angrier than I've ever seen him. They finally had enough. They told my brother that he had 1 week to find a new place for his family. My parents were done enabling his behavior. It was a tough moment for everyone, but it felt like a long time coming. Now here's the twist. Today, I got a call from my brother. He was crying, apologizing for everything. He said he had been stressed about money and didn't know what to do. But that's not the juicy part. He confessed that the real reason they were in such a bad spot was that he had racked up a ton of debt on online gaming. He had been hiding it from everyone, even his wife. He said he was desperate and didn't know how to fix it. I was floored. I knew they wasted money, but I had no idea it was this bad. He begged me not to tell his wife or our parents. He said he would get help and try to make things right. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.